Hi, Michael Patine here once again on It's Cuppa Time. And this week we are going to talk about bossed gongs. But first I think we need to define what is a bossed gong. Now a traditional gong, especially the type that most people would play in a sound healing, sound therapy situation, is a flat gong like this, a typical chow gong. So your Pisces and Minols and Gongland and things like that, and your chows and your wind gongs and other ones like that are flat-faced. Now, in an orchestra, this would be called a tam-tam, but I never call it a tam-tam because I don't play in an orchestra, and to me they're all just gongs. So this is a flat-faced gong, a typical chow. As you can hear, it's got a very wide spread of sounds. You've got low frequencies, you've got high frequencies. Get a little bigger mallet here. A rather wide spread of frequencies, not what we would call a focused sound. Now the big difference in a bossed gong is it has, you can see it here, this little boss, also known as a cup, a nipple, but most commonly referred to as a boss. And it's a raised center. So you can see that there. It's a little raised center here. Just a little cup like on a cymbal. And what that does is it focuses the sound of the gong. So it's not splashy like a typical chow or wind type. So when I play this on the boss, I get a very clear tone. Now if I move out and play it on the edge, I'll get some harmonics, overtones, whatever you want to call them. But that main note, that main frequency still comes through. So let's look at some typical bossed gongs. This one is a Chinese one. This is called a MBow Gong, B-A-O. And they're easily recognizable because most of them will have these concentric rings lathed in them. Otherwise, they're all dark. This is the actual crust of the metal after it's been heated and hammered and worked. And this is a MBow Gong. Now, the one thing you can find, because of that pure note, these can be tuned to specific pitches. And you will find different companies offering up to 4 octaves of tuned gongs, from about 6 inches up to maybe 28 or 30 inches in a bossed gong. So this is a very small, typical MBow Gong. Here's another one about the same size, and this one's been totally lathed and polished. This is an MBow from Dream Gongs, and this is actually tuned. This one is an E4. Coming through. These would typically be played on the boss because you want that nice pure note. You can play it on the edge more, but typically on the boss. Now I have a little over 2 octaves of these, and I like them. I use them for some of my recordings, especially the Sea We Swim In. If you look that one up and listen to it, it uses a lot of the tuned gongs on that. And in fact, I wrote most of the music on the tuned gongs. Another type we commonly see, this is a Thai gong, typically from Thailand or Burma. And these tend to be a little thinner. And you can also get these in tuned octaves. And one way we can distinguish these is it usually has this pattern, which is a variation on a lotus flower. And these smaller ones often have more of a boingy sound, almost like a steel drum. Compare it to the MBow Gong here. But they can vary. This one's fairly thin. I've had this one probably about 20 years. I've got about 6 or 8 of these forming a melodic set. Sometimes they're a little thicker and they'll be closer to a MBow Gong with that real solid sound. This, you can hear, it's just got a little bit of that bong in there. But that is a Thai gong. And you can, again, distinguish it by the dark face. Usually has a lotus pattern etched into it and then these little rings around it. Sometimes you will find more modern ones that are all polished, just like this MBow, and you'll have a completely polished one. Another one, this is a Vietnamese gong. This is a MBow Gong, or this is a Bossed Gong from Vietnam. A little different sound character. And one thing you can do, you can distinguish a lot of these from where they come in the regions by how they look. So if you look at these, they're very different looking. Not only the decorations and in some ways the shape, but the hammering. The Vietnamese gongs have a very distinct hammering there. There you can kind of see that. And you'll see this on most Vietnamese gongs, this type of a hammering pattern, which is very symmetrical in that. Whereas if you look at this is, it's just hammered all over, and it's more random hammering. And looking at the MBow Gong, it's hammered. You can see more of the strokes on the back. There we go. Kind of see the strokes there. But they have, you know, different hammering patterns and different shapes. Like the MBow Gong is very flat. It's got a bent edge, and then it's completely flat, and then we have the boss. You can see that. The Thai gong, it's got an edge, and the edge actually goes back a little. It's not straight back. And then the face goes down a little here. There's like a ridge, and it goes inward a little. Then a gentle curve coming up, going down a little towards the boss, and then the boss in the middle. On the Vietnamese gong, it has a fairly straight edge, and it has this little trough here right around it that you can see. It's a little indent here like a trough, and then this part is fairly flat, and then there's the boss. So all these different regions make similar gongs, but they have their own unique designs. And many of these, especially in Southeast Asia, a lot of these were differentiated by tribes and different makers. So you can travel and find a similar gong, but it'll have little variations if you go to like the next village or the next tribe or something. Now here is, we've seen this in a previous video, this is a tuned Bossed Gong by Steve Huback, and it's sort of based on the old Paiste tuned gongs. This is nickel silver. All these others are bronze. Very pure, piercing bell type tone. And this one is a D sharp 5 on this. Now that we've looked at some of these different designs, let me play all 5 of these small ones again with some different mallets so we can hear the different characteristics. So first, here's the nickel silver Steve Huback gong. The bronze Vietnamese gong. The bronze Chinese MBow Gong. And the bronze MBow Chinese gong. and then the bronze Thai gong. And this is with a soft marimba mallet. So let's look at it with a couple of other mallets here. We'll use a medium cord wound vibe mallet. Should give it a little more percussive tone. So again, the type of mallet you use is really important for the type of sound you can get. Now here's a medium rubber mallet. It should be a little harder than the vibe mallet. And you can hear that attack on there, that kind of a tick or click. So 5 completely different types of bossed gongs and very, very different sound character. So let's look at some larger ones I have. I have a couple of the same. These are all about, what are they, about 7 to 9 inches in diameter. Here is a 13-inch MBow Gong, and you can see very similar. All dark face. It's dark on the back. It's all again the crust, and then these 3 concentric rings lathed in, more for decoration than anything, I would say. And on this one, let's see if we can get it kind of hard to see, but you can really see the hammer strokes on the front here. Let's listen to this one. Nice, long-lasting, focused sort of tone. This one here is another Thai gong. Again, you can see the similarities. It's got the lotus flower. It's got this one has 3 rings. This one has 3 rings and actually a polished edge on this. And this is one of the first gongs I ever bought out of the initial 5 gongs I got back in 1974. I bought this from Carroll Sound Corporation in New York. This is a 14-inch Thai gong, and this has been all over with me. A lot of concert tours, a lot of improvisational music, different things. But it's got a nice deep sort of tone. Compared to the MBow Gong. Or they all have similar character because they're a bossed gong, but the overtones and sort of the shape of the sound changes. Now this one up here, this is a small gamelan style gong. This is a very heavy, as we can see, it has a really deep edge on it. Where the Thai, this is probably what, about 2.5 inches, maybe 2 inches. Same on this one. This one is about 5 inches deep. Very deep gong. It's fairly thick walled, so it has a little longer lasting sort of tone to it. And this is the thinnest of the three, so the note dies out quicker. And they're normally played on the boss. Again, we could play them on the face. Get a little different sound. And on this gamelan one, this is a small one. This is what? This is probably about 13 inches. We can see it's got the, again, that deep edge, and then it goes up a little bit here. We can see this ring here. This is a raised part here, and it slopes gently, comes down just slightly towards the center, and then we have a deeper boss than the others. But and then this one here, this is a 20-inch one. This is another gamelan gong. This is made out of iron. And this is actually a 3-piece or 4-piece gong. The cup is 1 piece. It's welded onto the face. And then this edge, which is fairly deep, and you can see it slopes inward. And actually, it might be hard to see. There's a seam right here, and there's a seam here. So this is all welded together from pieces. And we'll give this one a listen. Has that deep note, very focused in that, but it doesn't last. The iron just doesn't have the, it's thin compared to a bronze, and it doesn't have that power of carrying the note for long. Compared to this. Now this one's nice to play right here on the face because you get some really great harmonics. You still get the note, but you get some really nice sounds. It's very almost chordal. So that's an iron gong, and they use iron for 2 big reasons. One is it's much cheaper than bronze. And the other thing, this is very light. It's much more lightweight than bronze. So often if you see a traditional gamelan orchestra set, they usually build some sort of a facility to house it in. And it stays there in the village. They have this special little open building, and there's the gamelan, because especially the huge bronze gongs, the 35-inch ones like this, they're going to weigh 50, 60 pounds because it's just a lot of heavy bronze. And all the other ones, I mean, you've got hundreds of instruments or hundreds of gongs or keys on all the instruments, and they're bronze, and it's very heavy. So to move a traditional bronze gamelan is a big project. And like I said, they're usually housed somewhere. Even here in the States, often a university will own a gamelan, and they'll house it, someplace close to the theater where they play it, because to move it around is a big project. So for more portable gamelan sets, they'll often use the iron because it's much lighter, easier to transport. It doesn't have the power, as you can see, again. I mean, a much smaller instrument here, but more power, longer lasting tone. So they will often use iron instruments, again, cheaper to build and easier to transport. So let's look at a bigger, this is my biggest MBow Gong. This is an E3. And this gong is, I don't know, what is it, about 18 inches or so? Fairly heavy. This is a lot of bronze here. This must weigh 10 pounds or so, 12 pounds. So this is an E3 Dream MBow Gong. We can compare it. Here's the smaller one. This is an E4, so here's the octave above that one. And we'll look at one other I have here. This is another one of my original 5 gongs from Carol's Sound. This is a Japanese gong. And what is different and distinguishes this one, I would call this more of a tourist gong. This is stamped out of sheet metal. So there's no hammering really involved. It seems to be just stamped out in a press, and then they do a little light engraving, putting this sort of a 6-pointed star design, which is hard to see there, sort of like a lotus flower. But it actually has a fairly nice sound to it. And I suspect this one is made of brass. It certainly looks like brass. You can see the CS, the Carol Sound logo, sticker on the back. But I got this in 1974, along with the Thai gong and a dish gong, and then I got 2 chow gongs. So a thinner stamped brass, and even this edge, I mean, it's got some crinkles in it, but nothing here looks hammered out. Everything here is too smooth and refined, so you can really tell. I mean, this was stamped out. I think back then, I think I paid like $14 for this. And I might have paid like $18 for this one. I'd have to look back on the price list that I still have from then, but I mean, the gongs were pretty cheap as far as, you know, how much I paid for them. So we're going to take a look at one other kind of Bossed Gong, and that is from the Philippines. I've been a big fan of gamelan music since the late 70s, when I came across one of the early non-such LPs of gamelan music. These were field recordings, and I was totally taken by the sound of all these gongs, and it just amazed me. And I always wanted to have something like that, but to buy a set of gamelan gongs is sort of difficult to get a hold of, and they're expensive and all that. But about 20 years ago, it's probably even more than that. Probably about 25 years ago, I discovered the Kulentang gongs from the Philippines. Now, the Kulentang Ensemble is a whole ensemble, and what it uses is there's 8 of these gongs in a row, and they are tuned to a pentatonic scale. And then there is usually 1 or 2 larger bossed gongs similar to this, called a gung, that are played, and they often mute the boss in the middle and get all kinds of interesting sounds. Then there's some larger flat bossed gongs, a set of 4 that are sort of the talking gongs that they use, and then there is a straight drum played with very thin sticks to keep the rhythm. But this is the Kulentang Ensemble, and it's led by the 8 bossed gongs that make up the actual Kulentang. Now, they're normally put into a framework that has rope going across, 2 strands of rope, so that they rest on there and resonate. On this table I have 2 pieces of thin rubber there. I do have some videos of me playing the Kulentang from years ago. I will probably link those in the description below. And I will be doing more talking on the Kulentang and other melodic ideas in a future video. But this is just a taste of them. Now they're normally played with wooden sticks, but the difference is these are extremely light. I mean, it's almost like a balsa wood. It's so light. I don't know what type of wood it is. But like I said, I discovered these about 25 years ago. Looked all over the internet. I found a place in California that was selling them, and I ordered a complete set. So I got the 8 bronze gongs, and I got a pair of sticks. And as you can see, they're well worn. So I don't practice with the sticks at all. I save those for some performances because I don't know where to get another pair of these except from the Philippines. So anyway, one thing that you can distinguish these by is these are sand cast, and you can see the front here. It's very decorated. Let's take a quick look at this one here. You can see all the design on there. These are cast. Design on the edge. Here's the back. Very rough here. Just like the Ufip Burma bells and Ufip ice bells and that. These are sand cast. And what's interesting about them is they're not perfect. Like if you look here, you see some little defects. These are actually holes that go all the way through the metal where the casting, the pour didn't, quite do it. But each one of these is individually cast, and then it's lathed around the edge, and it's hammered some to tune it. So let's look at this other one, smaller one. And they're usually about, what is it? I think the largest is like 9 or 10 inches down to usually about 7 inches. But you see the design is fairly intricate. There are some I've seen where they're completely plain. But again, here we have a star pattern, sort of a variation. If we look on the Tai Gong with the lotus flower. So we see a lot of similar motifs in different areas. But this one has all the decoration around it. And again, like I said, the edge, if you kind of look on there, I mean, these are rough looking. These are made by people. These are not made by machine. These are made by people. And these are from the Muslim community in the Philippines, and traditionally they were played by women. And the music that the Kulentang makes is just really amazing. It's a very rhythmic yet melodic. There's a lot of repeating patterns and interlocking rhythms. I don't play any traditional music. I have found there are some transcriptions done in sort of a tablature, just like guitar tab. And I have those, and I've kind of played around with them. But like all the music I do, I have made a conscious choice not to play any traditional music or any other music written by someone else. I just play my music, whether it's composed or improvised, and that's a conscious choice. Now with the gongs, part of it is I'm not from the Philippines. I'm not a Philippine American. I don't have that heritage. It's not my heritage. So I haven't delved into that because of that. I really appreciate the music. I have quite a few recordings and I listen to them. And what I try to do with all the music, I listen to the Kulentang music. I listen to the gamelan music. I listen to other gong musics from the whole China, Japan, Southeast Asia area. And what I try to do is just take the spirit from these musics. Like I said, I don't copy them. I don't play any traditional gamelan music. I don't play any traditional Kulentang music or anything like that. But I do try to honor the instruments I have and play with much of the same spirit. I might, take a few little motifs and ideas from recordings and videos that I've heard and incorporate them into what I do. But let's listen to these first with the sticks. Very lively, very bright sound. And even with the traditional stand, it's open underneath, where here I'm playing it right into a table. So that'll change the resonance a little bit. But I often play them with a marimba mallet. Give it a little softer sound. And again, I save my sticks. You hear a little more percussion in there, a little more attack. So I play it on the tips. I save those for performances if I'm going to use those on a specific song. Some of my compositions that I wrote way back 22 years ago, whatever, after I got these, do use the sticks, but most of the others I ended up going with a marimba mallet of some type. So they have a great sound, very similar to the pot gongs or kettle gongs of the gamelan. And they're often called that because that's what they look like. They look like a pot, a metal pot, or a metal kettle. So sometimes you will hear this type of gong referred to as a pot gong or a kettle gong. But very similar to the gamelan gongs, and there are similar gongs in Thailand and Malaysia and countries like that. So horizontal gongs on a stand we will find in different Southeast Asian countries. Not really much sound on the face. They are fascinating, and like I said, once I saw them on the internet, saw a video, and it's like I have to have a set. So I kept searching and found somebody in California where there is a very large Filipino community. I found this place that brings in a lot of goods for the Filipino community, and they were selling all the Kulentang instruments, all the different gongs, and I had to order a set of these, and I've been very happy that I did that because they're fabulous, and I do love to play them, and they give me that sort of a melodic content to my music. But again, it's in a set of 8, and they are pentatonically tuned, and like all the other instruments, just like gamelan and that, is they're tuned by the maker. They're not tuned to any specific pitches. Not like here in the West, we would go, okay, this is going to be a C, and this is going to be an A, and, something like that. They're pentatonic, but they're tuned as a set. So just like a gamelan is built all in one, and it's often difficult to mix instruments from one gamelan set to another because they will be out of tune with each other. The same with the Kulentang. Is my understanding, these gong makers, tune one gong and then tune everything off of the one gong, like the lower gong, and then tune everything off of that one, tune the other gongs off of that one. So they're all tuned as a set or a family. So I could buy another set of Kulentang, and they would have possibly a very different tuning, or they might be just slightly sharp or slightly flat from these, but the same sort of pentatonic characteristics. So that's Bossed Gongs. And like I said, I'm going to do a video in the future where I play the Kulentang, I play these gongs on my melodic gong play setup, and play some of the music that I have written over the years. So thanks a lot for tuning in. Hit subscribe down below if you really like what's happening here. And tune in next week on It's Cuppa Time.